I stood in the doorway of a small craftsman house in Ballard, watching my husband hand a check for $340,000 to a woman I had never met. The woman's hands trembled as she accepted it, tears streaming down her weathered face, while David stood beside her with an expression I had not seen in years, absolute certainty. Behind them, a handmade banner read, "Thank you for your generosity, Mrs. Chen," and I realized with cold horror that the room was full of people. Neighbors. Friends. A local news reporter with a camera. Every single person in that cramped living room knew something I had desperately tried to keep buried. David turned to me then, his eyes holding none of the pain or uncertainty that had defined our last 2 years together, and said 5 words that shattered everything: "This is Elena's inheritance money." My throat closed. That money, my aunt's money, the $340,000 I had received just 8 months earlier, was supposed to be mine. I had earned it through years of family obligations and careful relationship management. Instead, my husband had just donated every single cent to Ricardo Mendoza's ex-wife, and everyone in that room knew exactly why. My name was Elena Vasquez-Chen, and in early 2017, I was a senior immigration attorney at one of Seattle's most respected boutique firms. I had built my career on precision, strategy, and an ability to remain calm under pressure. My life in our Queen and condo overlooked Elliott Bay, my daughter Sophia attended private school, and on paper, my 14-year marriage to David Chen appeared solid. But paper never told the whole story. David was a freelance tech consultant who worked from home, a gentle and emotionally expressive man who had always been my opposite. Where I controlled my feelings, he wore his openly. For 12 years, that dynamic had worked beautifully. Then, in March of 2015, everything changed. David started blood pressure medication after a routine physical, and within weeks, our intimate life began to crumble. The first few failures, we laughed off. Then they became uncomfortable. Then devastating. By summer of 2015, David could barely achieve an erection, and when he managed partial success, the anxiety in his eyes killed any pleasure for both of us. He went to a urologist that April. He tried medications. He suggested couples therapy, which I dismissed as unnecessary. But nothing worked, and month by month, I watched him withdraw into himself. He stopped initiating any physical contact. He avoided our bedroom until I was already asleep. The distance between us grew from inches to miles, all while we still lived in the same 3-bedroom condo. By New Year's Eve of 2016, we had not had successful intercourse in nearly 2 years. I was 41 years old, professionally successful, physically active, and completely starved for intimacy. That was the night David tried one more time, after my aunt's funeral, after I had inherited $340,000, after I had drunk just enough wine to feel entitled to everything I wanted. He failed again. I felt nothing but resentment. If you have not already subscribed to this channel, please do so now, because what happened next changed everything. I met Ricardo Mendoza in June of 2016 at a regional immigration law conference in Portland. He was 45, a senior partner at a competing firm, married with 2 teenage sons, and everything David was not: confident, physically imposing, and utterly present. When he looked at me during a panel discussion, I felt something I had not experienced in my own home for over a year: desired. We exchanged business cards. Then emails. Then late-night phone calls that had nothing to do with case law. By July, I had convinced myself that what I was planning was not betrayal but survival. David could not give me what I needed, his body would not cooperate, and his wounded pride had made him distant and cold. I had tried to be patient, tried to be understanding, but 2 years was long enough. I deserved to feel wanted. I deserved pleasure. I deserved to be touched by a man who did not look at me with shame and apology in his eyes. Our first meeting was at a hotel near the airport in late July. I told David I had a client dinner. Ricardo told his wife he had a deposition preparation. For 3 hours, I remembered what it felt like to be a sexual being rather than a patient, understanding wife watching her husband's masculinity disintegrate. I drove home that night feeling powerful and justified. David was asleep on the couch, his laptop still open beside him. I felt no guilt whatsoever. I had simply taken back what marriage was supposed to provide. The affair continued through the fall of 2016, carefully scheduled around court dates and family obligations. Ricardo and I met every 2 to 3 weeks, always at different hotels, always with plausible professional cover stories. Then my aunt died in late December, and suddenly I had resources I had never possessed before. $340,000 transferred into our joint account in early January of 2017. David suggested we use it for Sophia's college fund, for renovations, for long-term investments. I agreed verbally, then quietly opened a separate account and transferred $200,000 into it. The money felt like power, like permission, like proof that I was entitled to happiness on my own terms. I upgraded our meeting locations. The Fairmont Olympic Hotel became our regular spot, luxury suites, room service, entire afternoons instead of stolen hours. I bought expensive lingerie. I paid for weekend trips to Portland and Vancouver disguised as legal conferences. Meanwhile, David grew quieter. He stopped asking about my day. He spent more time in his home office with the door closed. I assumed he was depressing himself further into his inadequacy, and frankly, I did not care. I was 42 years old and finally feeling alive again. What I did not know was that David had noticed something I had been careless about: the credit card charges from the inheritance account. The afternoon David handed that check to Carla Mendoza, Ricardo's ex-wife, was supposed to be a consultation. David had emailed me 3 days earlier saying a friend of a colleague needed immigration advice and had asked if I could spare an hour on a Saturday afternoon. The address was in Ballard, a neighborhood I rarely visited, in a small house that clearly belonged to someone struggling financially. I had expected a private meeting. Instead, I walked into a room full of at least 25 people. Carla stood at the center, a woman in her early 50s with gray-streaked hair and tired eyes, holding my daughter's hand. Sophia was there. My 11-year-old daughter was standing in that room, and the expression on her face told me she knew something terrible was coming. David stepped forward with a framed check, $340,000, made out to Carla Mendoza, with a memo line that read, "Elena's generous donation." "My wife believes in supporting women who have been betrayed," David said, his voice steady and cold. Carla's husband left her after 23 years of marriage for a younger woman. Left her with 2 sons in college and a mortgage she could not afford alone. Elena wanted to help. The reporter's camera flashed. Carla began crying. And I understood, David knew everything. He knew about Ricardo. He knew I had been using the inheritance money to fund hotel rooms and expensive trips. And now he was destroying me in the most public, legal, and irreversible way possible, using the very money I had spent betraying him. If you are feeling angry right now, please hit the like button, because it got so much worse. I tried to speak, but my voice came out as a choked whisper. "David, what are you?" "Do not," he interrupted, still looking at Carla rather than me. "Do not insult these people with lies." I looked desperately at Sophia, whose eyes were wet with tears, then back at the crowd of strangers watching my humiliation. "This is my inheritance," I finally managed, my attorney instincts kicking in despite my panic. "You cannot legally donate marital assets without my consent." David finally turned to me, and his expression was carved from stone. "You mean the marital assets you secretly transferred into a separate account? The marital assets you spent at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel 17 times over the past 3 months? The marital assets you used to buy lingerie I never saw and pay for trips I never took? His voice rose slightly. Those marital assets? The room went completely silent. I felt my face burn with shame and rage. You were not a husband, I hissed, dropping any pretense. You stopped being a husband 2 years ago when you stopped being able to. I caught myself, seeing Sophia's devastated face, but David finished the sentence for me. When I stopped being able to perform sexually due to a medical condition, he said flatly. When medication affected my physical function and you decided that gave you permission to commit adultery with a married colleague. When my body failed and you punished me for it by spending our daughter's inheritance on hotel rooms with Ricardo Mendoza. Someone in the room gasped. Carla made a small, broken sound. And I knew in that moment that David had planned every single word, every witness, every detail of this destruction. David pulled out a manila folder from a bag beside the door. Carla deserves to know exactly where this donation came from, he said, opening it to reveal printed pages. These are credit card statements from the account Elena opened in January of 2017 using her inheritance. Fairmont Olympic Hotel, January 14th, January 28th, February 4th, February 11th, February 25th. He handed the pages to Carla, whose hands shook as she looked at them. And these, David continued, pulling out photographs, are from a private investigator I hired in late February. Elena Vasquez-Chan and Ricardo Mendoza, photographed entering and exiting the Fairmont Olympic together on 4 separate occasions. The photos were unmistakable, Ricardo and me in the hotel lobby, Ricardo's hand on my lower back, me laughing at something he said, both of us clearly intimate and familiar. David set them on the coffee table where everyone could see. Ricardo Mendoza left his wife Carla 3 weeks ago, David said, his voice cracking slightly for the first time. Told her he had fallen in love with someone else. Left her after 23 years, after she supported him through law school, after she raised their sons while he built his career. He looked directly at me then. You destroyed my marriage because I could not satisfy you physically due to a medical condition I was actively trying to treat. You took money meant for our daughter's future and used it to fund an affair with a man who destroyed his own family. So yes, Elena, I donated your inheritance. I donated it to the woman whose life you helped ruin, and I did it legally, publicly, and permanently. The reporter stepped forward. Mr. Chan, can you comment on why you chose this particular form of justice? David interrupted. I chose justice. My wife said I was not man enough to provide her with excitement. She was right. I am not man enough to cheat, to lie, or to destroy families. But I am man enough to make sure her betrayal cost her exactly what she valued most, money and reputation. What would you have done in David's place? Leave a comment below, because this story has one more turn you will not believe. I left that house in Ballard unable to speak, unable to process what David had done. The story appeared in a local news blog 2 days later, Seattle attorney's generous donation to betrayed wife, carefully worded but clear enough that everyone in our professional circle understood what had happened. I lost 3 major clients within a week. My firm asked me to take a leave of absence. Ricardo stopped returning my calls. Apparently, public exposure was not part of his plan for our grand romance. And Sophia, my daughter, stopped speaking to me entirely. David filed for divorce in April of 2017, seeking full custody based on my moral unfitness. I tried to fight the inheritance donation in court and lost. David's attorney proved I had secretly transferred the funds and used them for personal expenditures that violated our marital agreement. The judge was not sympathetic. By June, I had lost everything: my marriage, my reputation, most of my inheritance, and my daughter's respect. I tried to end it all one night in July, took an entire bottle of sleeping pills, and woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed. The person who found me was David, who still had keys to our condo because the divorce was not finalized. He saved my life even after I destroyed his. I spent 2 months in intensive therapy, slowly understanding the magnitude of what I had done. I had blamed David for a medical condition he could not control. I had justified betrayal with sexual frustration. I had valued my physical pleasure over my daughter's stability, my vows, and basic human decency. I had become someone I did not recognize. If you are wondering how David is doing now, I will tell you. About 3 months after our divorce was finalized in late 2017, he discovered something that changed everything for him. He had been researching solutions for his erectile dysfunction, desperate to understand what had gone wrong, when he came across information from a doctor named Jerry Burroughs. Dr. Burroughs had developed something he called the masculinity coffee, a special blend made from 3 common household ingredients that, when prepared correctly, could restore erectile function naturally. David tried it, and within weeks, he told me later through our lawyers, everything changed. His erections returned completely. His confidence rebuilt itself. The anxiety and shame that had defined his last years of our marriage disappeared. If you are curious about what exactly those 3 household ingredients are that transformed David's life, look in the pinned comment of this video right now. There is a direct link to Dr. Jerry Burroughs' complete information about the masculinity coffee. But do not wait too long, because this information could be restricted at any time. By 2019, David had primary custody of Sophia, a new relationship with a woman who appreciated him, and a completely restored intimate life. Meanwhile, I rebuilt my practice slowly, focusing on pro bono work and trying to earn back some fraction of the respect I had destroyed. I never remarried. I never stopped regretting what I did to a good man whose only crime was having a medical problem he could not control. I had destroyed my marriage for stolen moments in hotel rooms, while David found a solution in 3 simple household ingredients that gave him back everything I thought he had lost forever, including the strength to walk away from me and build the life he actually deserved.